Welcome to the Writer Reads Short Stories. This is Harper's Choice, Part 2. Luca's Shadow! Are we there yet? I asked, and I wasn't prepared when he turned and gave me a powerful shove, propelling me past two she-oaks and through the scraggly growth of a bottle brush. Go! Hey! There was no response, so I picked myself up and turned around to see where I'd landed. Luca's Shadow, indeed! Shock shivered through me, and I turned back the way I'd come. There was no way. No freaking way. I took 3 deep breaths and held the last one in. Then I closed my eyes and did a slow 180 away from the forest. Counting to 3 in my head, I opened first one eye and then the other. Oh, hell to the hells no! I wondered if running back into the forest would do me an ounce of good, but I kept my eyes open, letting my head get used to the idea of what I saw. Maybe I was under the influence. I was still trying to wrap my head around what was in front of me when something came crashing through the undergrowth behind me. I thought of unicorns, and then I thought of trolls, and then I remembered sunlight and dawn and pixies dancing and registered I was seeing nothing but twilight and streetlights, and I started to run. I was too close to the veil to do anything else. If it's a troll, I thought, I'm toast. I briefly wondered what I would do if it was something else, but I didn't want to think about that. I just wanted to outdistance whatever it was that was tearing through the bottle brush behind me. I reached a street light and was glad to find pavement under my feet. Behind me, I heard a thump and a clatter followed by an angry shout, so I sprinted forward. Street lights weren't a problem. Things that go bump in the night, especially things that come charging out of elven forests, can be. And I had no intention of stopping to find out if I'd been right. The streets were wider than I'd remembered, the warehouses long gone, replaced by elegant double-story apartments, but that wasn't what made me stop beneath the streetlight at the edge of the park. No, that had been the shuttle rising above the apartments about 2 blocks down. The space shuttle. I heard someone call out behind me, and then footsteps. Wait! I kept running, and the footsteps picked up pace. Whoever it was called out again. Please wait! The please almost did it, but the street was deserted, the street lights too far apart, and I knew there were creatures that could mimic a human voice. I ran on, heading toward the point from which I'd seen the shuttle rise. You're hallucinating, said the little voice inside my head, but I ignored it. Oh, God, the voice called from behind me, and it sounded more plaintive than before. Don't leave me on my own. It was the "oh God" that did it. None of the creatures of the dark used that phrase. They called on specific deities, old deities, and that was if they called on them at all. I slowed down, taking a chance and stopping in the cold white glow shed by the next street light. I wasn't taking that much of a chance. To my surprise, the thing following me was human, and he was loaded down like a pack mule. I watched as he passed under one of the streetlights half a block behind me. He really was human, and now I looked more closely, sort of familiar. Who are you? I asked, waiting as he came closer. He looked like he was wearing a paramedic's uniform. I gave you a blanket, he said, and caught the blank look I gave him. After the warehouse, you were in pretty bad shape, so I gave you a blanket. He stopped in front of me, breathing hard. Didn't want shock setting in, he finished lamely. You don't remember me? I'm sorry. Yeah, well, you're pretty out of it, and the elf wouldn't stop. That was one way to put it, but I didn't want to remember. Man didn't seem to recognize it, though. They said you were dead, he said. That you died in the fire? I tried contacting your department, but I waited for his voice to peter out, then pointed to the extra pack he was dragging behind him by its straps. Do you want a hand with that? He glanced down as though he'd forgotten it. Oh, yeah, thanks. They let me grab some supplies, said time moves differently in the other realm. This one's yours. There was a roar from behind him, and slightly to the right of us. I turned in time to see another shuttle lifting from behind the buildings. The medic stared at it, and I half turned to follow his gaze. You are shitting me, he said, his voice not much more than a breath, and I felt my world shudder. You saw that? It was a bit hard to miss. You mean I'm not high? I pressed, and he looked at me and shook his head. Like I said, time moves differently in the other realm. He paused, and I could see his face had gone a funny shade of grey. Was that a spaceship? I glanced up at the thing, let my eyes take in its shape and form, and then I looked back at him. Shuttle, I said, and he stared at me, mouth agape. You know what that is? I pushed back the sense of unreality threatening to overwhelm me, and nodded. Yep, I said, trying to convince myself I was in control. That maybe I was on a movie set, a really sophisticated one. That was a space shuttle. The paramedic was having none of it. You're telling me we're in the future? Yep, I said, wishing we weren't doing this here, in the middle of the street, and that I had something to counteract the shock. Let's go find chocolate. Chocolate? I need chocolate, I said, figuring the sugar would help both of us fight the shock. They've got to have chocolate, right? Yeah, chocolate. He moved up beside me, dividing his attention between me and the sky. I reached out and took the extra pack he'd brought, and we walked a few more steps in the direction of the buildings from behind which the shuttle had taken off. And then he stopped again. You think they remember us? He asked.